HMP Swinfen Hall is marketed as a training prison for young adult men, a place where 18 to 25-year-olds can supposedly rehabilitate, grow, and rejoin society better than when they arrived. But what this latest inspection reveals is not a training ground. It's a pressure cooker, a site where violence simmers constantly beneath the surface, where drug use is rampant, and where inexperienced staff are increasingly outmatched by the complex, volatile reality of modern prison life. The place is filled with testosterone, trauma, and time, and right now, it's a powder keg. Built to hold around 600 prisoners, the jail currently houses a mix of sentenced young adults and Category C prisoners, most of whom are serving long or indeterminate sentences. They arrive at Swinfen Hall with expectation to progress through the system, to gain skills, to begin rebuilding, but instead, many become locked in a stagnant routine, locked in their cells for 22 hours a day, surrounded by fear, drugs, and staff who are simply not equipped to deal with them. Violence here is high. Inspectors found that 38% of prisoners felt unsafe at the time of the inspection, and they had every reason to. Serious assaults were not rare. Many men described avoiding entire areas of the jail due to gang pressures or ongoing debts. Bullying, intimidation, and revenge attacks weren't the exception. They were the rhythm of the place. A new intake onto one of the main wings described being immediately tested by older prisoners, forced to pick a side or risk solitary vulnerability. There's a survival code here, and if you don't know it, you learn quickly or you break. The drug situation is worsening. Spice, crack cocaine, and buprenorphine are widely available inside. Some is thrown over walls, some is brought in by visitors, some, according to several prisoners, is coming in through staff. The mandatory drug testing (MDT) regime was found to be almost entirely ineffective. It wasn't being used to disrupt supply, it was barely being used at all. Prisoners who failed tests often faced minimal consequences, and support services for those in addiction were severely underfunded. Living conditions vary wildly from one part of the jail to another. The older wings are deteriorating, paint is peeling, cells are cold, mice and cockroach sightings were common. Some toilets don't flush properly, shower facilities are outdated and often non-functional. In-cell phones don't work consistently. On some wings, graffiti covers the walls, not as some expression of rebellion, but as the only way to mark time. One cell had 2021 etched into the wall with a broken piece of plastic, a record of years wasted. Despite these conditions, Swinfen Hall presents a clean face to the outside. Paperwork is filed, policies are in place. There is a visible effort by some of the more senior staff to promote professionalism and decency. But the actual delivery of these principles on the wings is inconsistent at best. Many officers are new. Over half of the frontline staff had less than 2 years of experience. Several admitted to inspectors that they felt unprepared for the dynamics on their units. When challenged, some admitted they were scared of certain prisoners. Others, in private, said they were considering leaving the job altogether. The prison operates a full segregation unit, but its use has become a quiet scandal. One man had been held in isolation for over 60 days, with less than 1 hour a day outside of his cell. The unit itself is bleak, no purposeful activity, limited mental health contact, no progression plans. It's supposed to be a last resort. In practice, it's often used as a convenient dumping ground for prisoners deemed too difficult to manage on the wings. It's administrative control, masquerading as discipline. Education is failing. While Swinfen Hall has a contract in place with a national education provider, staff shortages, prisoner movement restrictions, and lockdowns have rendered most of the curriculum meaningless. Too many prisoners are not attending any lessons. The few that do are offered basic maths and English, with few vocational options. A young man who wanted to learn barbering told inspectors he had been waiting for 11 months for a course to open. Another said he was simply ticking boxes because he needed education credits for his parole file. Gym access, one of the only reliefs for young men with bottled aggression, has been curtailed due to staff shortages. Some wings hadn't seen a gym session in over a week. When they do get time out, it's tightly regimented with limited interaction. The football pitch, once a space for release, has become another site of tension, a battleground for wing rivalries and postcode grudges. Mental health care is patchy. There is a mental health team, but it is overwhelmed. Too many referrals are made, with no follow-up. One prisoner had attempted self-harm 3 times in a week and still hadn't been assessed. ACCTs, the official care documents for those at risk of suicide, were found to be poorly completed, with little evidence of meaningful support. When asked, some staff could not explain the difference between ACCT reviews and routine welfare checks. In a prison housing vulnerable, emotionally volatile young men, this kind of neglect is lethal. The prison's strategy for progression, moving prisoners through their sentence, preparing them for open conditions or parole, is weak. Too many men are stagnating with no idea when their next review is. Sentence plans are out of date, personal officers aren't visible, prisoners feel forgotten, and when men feel forgotten, they stop engaging. That's when the violence begins again. The drugs, the chaos, the system eats itself. HMP Swinfen Hall, at its core, is not evil. It is not brutal by design, but it is broken, and it is dangerous in its brokenness. It doesn't scream, it doesn't burn, it just slowly corrodes. Young men go in, damaged but alive, and many come out angrier, colder, more dangerous than when they entered. Now ask yourself, what does it mean when a prison built for growth has become a warehouse for decline? Why do we still call it a training prison when it can't offer education, can't offer work, can't offer therapy? What kind of future are we creating when our answer to youthful violence is more isolation and neglect? And when will the system stop managing symptoms and start treating the disease? Let us know your thoughts, because HMP Swinfen Hall isn't just failing, it's teaching young men that the state will cage them, forget them, and call it justice. A Midlands prison descended into controversy after it emerged that a student support officer, Leanne Butcher, had engaged in sexual and inappropriate relationships with 2 of the UK's most notorious inmates. The 31-year-old mother of 2 from Warwickshire secured a job in the education department of HMP Swinfen Hall after responding to a Facebook advert. What followed was a staggering breakdown in professional boundaries and prison protocol, revealing yet again the vulnerabilities in Britain's prison staffing and vetting system. Miss Butcher, who began working at the Category C prison in March 2021, initially presented herself as someone seeking a stable role to support her family, but within a year, she had developed intimate relationships with not 1, but 2 dangerous prisoners, convicted killer Junior Lukalo Mami and gunpoint robber Tariq Durvan. Both men were serving lengthy sentences in different prisons at the time, having passed through Swinfen Hall, where they had formed initial contact with Butcher. Junior Lukalo Mami had been convicted of the manslaughter of 17-year-old aspiring rapper Myron Yard in London in 2016. He was sentenced to 12 years and was still serving time when suspicions about his connection with Miss Butcher first surfaced. An internal search of prison phone logs and a deep dive into Miss Butcher's personal mobile uncovered sexually explicit phone calls between the 2. In the calls, they professed love, discussed their relationship, and exchanged sexual dialogue. Miss Butcher even accessed the prison computer system to investigate whether Mr. Lukalo Mami faced deportation, a clear abuse of her role and data access rights. At the same time, Miss Butcher was also in contact with Tariq Durvan, another high-profile inmate who had previously been jailed for armed robbery involving the brothers of England footballers Marcus Rashford and Trent Alexander-Arnold. During the Moss Side incident, Mr. Durvan and 2 accomplices used a sawn-off shotgun, machete, and baseball bat to steal a Range Rover, watches, and wallets. His criminal past also included drug dealing and violence. From prison, Mr. Durvan maintained contact with Miss Butcher through an illegal iPhone 6, using it to exchange images, engage in video chats, and even post on social media. He was also heard speaking to an Albanian contact about ongoing drug operations. Their contact wasn't just emotional, it became logistical. Mr. Dervan at one point asked Miss Butcher to smuggle contraband into prison, though she reportedly declined. Miss Butcher's phone logs revealed more than 400 interactions with Mr. Dervan over a 3-month period, during which their sexual relationship played out alongside Mr. Dervan's ongoing criminal communications from inside the jail. Eventually, Miss Butcher was caught after confiding in her line manager during a moment of indiscretion while drinking. Her phone was seized, and the scope of her misconduct became undeniable. She was charged with 3 counts of misconduct in public office and appeared before Birmingham Crown Court in August 2024. During sentencing, Miss Butcher wept in the dock, but what followed was a moment of disbelief for many. Judge Kerry Malin sentenced her not to custody, but to a 2-year community order, citing exceptional circumstances. The judge pointed to her mental health challenges and childcare responsibilities. She was ordered to complete 35 days of rehabilitation activity and 80 hours of unpaid work. Judge Malin made it clear, however, that she held Miss Butcher responsible for knowingly breaching her duty of care and the security of the prison system. The court heard that Miss Butcher had no formal qualifications and had received minimal training due to COVID-19 restrictions, a few hours instead of the several days normally required. Her defense team portrayed her as vulnerable, misguided, and lacking the professional resilience needed to cope with the complex and manipulative environment of a prison. But critics argue that her actions went beyond naivety and highlight a deeper systemic problem. The issue of staff-prisoner relationships in the UK has come under increasing scrutiny. Miss Butcher's case adds fuel to the fire, showing how gaps in training, vetting, and oversight allow manipulation to thrive. What made this case particularly alarming was the caliber of the inmates involved. These were not petty criminals, but highly dangerous, repeat offenders with histories of serious violence, organised robbery, and gang ties. Despite this, Miss Butcher found herself emotionally entangled with both. The idea that she was having phone sex with 2 separate inmates simultaneously, including one using a smuggled smartphone to continue criminal activity, struck at the heart of prison security. For her part, Butcher said she felt scared at times, especially of Mr. Dervan, who she claimed had assaulted a vulnerable inmate in her presence. In messages, she told him to respect her and warned him to behave like an adult. But at the same time, she continued the communication and became romantically involved, opening herself up to further compromise. The public response to the sentencing was mixed. Some viewed the decision to spare Miss Butcher jail as a soft ruling that undermines the seriousness of her breach. Others recognized her vulnerabilities and pointed to the failings of the prison recruitment and support systems that allowed her to slip into this position unchecked. Meanwhile, Mr. Dervan was handed an additional 8 months for possessing a mobile phone in prison and transmitting sound or images without authority. Mr. Luklo Mami, who has since been released after serving the custodial part of his sentence, denies one similar charge and is due to stand trial. The case exposes a grim reality, that in a system stretched for staff, lacking in training and under constant pressure from overcrowding and violence, the lines between authority and inmate can blur dangerously fast. Whether through manipulation or misguided affection, Miss Butcher's story serves as a cautionary tale of how easily control can be lost, and how the consequences echo far beyond the prison walls. A violent mass disorder involving 13 prisoners at HMP and YOI Swinfen Hall erupted in August 2018 and has finally resulted in sentencing for those involved. What began as an isolated assault quickly escalated into chaos, forcing prison staff into a dangerous and high-pressure situation and raising serious questions about gang activity, weapon accessibility, and security breakdowns within the prison system. The incident took place on the 6th of August 2018 during a routine exercise session on one of the prison wings. Tensions ignited when inmate Adil Khan launched an unprovoked attack on fellow prisoner Dijon Johnson. What might have remained a personal dispute spiraled into a full-blown riot as other inmates quickly joined in. The violence intensified when prisoners from a separate wing, alerted by the commotion, flooded into the yard and began fighting. The disorder grew rapidly in scale and severity, with multiple inmates sustaining serious injuries. Among the most disturbing aspects of the incident was the use of improvised weapons. Prisoners Clayton Beach and Adil Ali wielded makeshift knives fashioned from plastic cutlery, using them to stab and slash fellow inmates during the melee. The potential for fatalities was high, but no deaths occurred. Nonetheless, the prison's control was momentarily lost, and even with swift intervention, 2 officers were injured while trying to restrain those involved. Detective Sergeant Ian Whitehouse, who led the post-incident investigation, emphasized the seriousness of the event, noting that the violence could easily have spiraled further out of control. Prison officers were put under immense pressure to bring the disorder to an end, he stated, acknowledging their swift action in containing what could have become a much bloodier incident. Stafford Crown Court handled the sentencing of all 13 men involved in the riot. The sentences reflected a mixture of concurrent terms, suspended sentences, and short custodial periods, depending on the severity of each inmate's involvement, their prior records, and whether they pleaded guilty. Jerome Russell, 22, 24 months, suspended for violent disorder. Leon Clark, 23, 19 months for violent disorder, to run concurrently with his existing sentence. Clayton Beach, 22, 24 months, suspended for violent disorder. Dishan Downey, 21, 18 months for violent disorder, concurrent to an existing sentence. Demaya Logan, 24, 14 weeks for violent disorder, concurrent. Adil Khan, 22, 21 months, suspended for 24 months for violent disorder. Dijon Johnson, 22, 22 months for violent disorder, concurrent, following a trial. Adil Ali, 21, 20 months for violent disorder and 3 months for weapon possession, concurrent. Rashad Rashid, 21, 24 months for violent disorder, concurrent. Salman Awais, 21, 16 months for violent disorder, concurrent. Abdi Noor, 20, 18 months for violent disorder, concurrent. Mohammed Zaman, 21, 16 months, suspended for 24 months for violent disorder. Samin Umar, 22, 14 weeks for violent disorder, concurrent. While many of the sentences were suspended or set to run alongside existing prison terms, the convictions are significant. Each inmate was found guilty of violent disorder, an offence that reflects the seriousness of the riot and the threat posed to both inmates and staff. The 2018 incident highlights ongoing concerns about prison safety, particularly in facilities like Swinfen Hall that house young adult males, a demographic statistically more prone to impulsive violence and gang affiliations. The ease with which the violence spread across wings and the use of weapons fashioned from everyday objects underscores how quickly order can collapse without robust preventative measures and rapid response capacity. Though no lives were lost that day, the incident served as a reminder of the volatility simmering beneath the surface in many of the UK's prisons. The convictions may offer a sense of justice, but they also point to the larger challenge of maintaining security in environments plagued by overcrowding, staff shortages, and a deeply entrenched culture of violence.